Millionaire catches twin girls crying behind the grocery store, then discovered who they really were. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. It was a chilly Tuesday afternoon when Charles Winters, a wealthy CEO, was driving home from a long day at the office. His mind, as usual, was preoccupied with business deals and the endless responsibilities of his company. The city of Denver was bustling with life, but Charles felt detached, as he always did. The lights, the noise, the energy, nothing seemed to reach him. He had it all. The mansion, the cars, the success, but somehow, it all felt hollow. As he drove through the quiet neighborhood near his home, something caught his eye. Two small figures were huddled behind a grocery store, their backs pressed against the cold concrete wall. The wind was biting, and the girls looked frail, barely more than children, their faces streaked with tears. Charles slowed down. His curiosity piqued. He was no stranger to seeing people in need. But something about this scene was different. Without a second thought, he pulled over and got out of the car. As he approached them, he could see that the older of the two girls was clutching a small, worn-out blanket, while the younger one, barely 5 or 6 years old, was shivering uncontrollably. They were both crying, their sobs soft but desperate, like they were scared of something or someone. "Hey, are you okay?" Charles asked gently, kneeling down to their level. The older girl looked up at him, her eyes wide with fear. "Please, don't take us back," she whispered, her voice trembling. Charles froze. His heart tightened. He had heard of children in difficult situations, but this felt different, more urgent, more painful. He could see the fear in their eyes, the way they clung to each other for comfort, as if they had no one else in the world. "What happened? Where are your parents?" Charles asked softly, his voice barely above a whisper. The older girl shook her head, her small hands clutching the younger girl even tighter. "We don't have anyone. We're alone," she said. Charles felt a pang of guilt. Here he was, a man with everything, and yet he had never truly felt the weight of what it meant to be alone. These girls, so small, so vulnerable, were living a reality he could barely fathom. He looked around, wondering how no one had noticed them, how no one had stopped to help. But in that moment, he knew that it was up to him to do something. Without thinking, he lifted the younger girl into his arms and reached out to the older one. "Come with me. I'll make sure you're safe," he said, his voice calm but firm. The older girl hesitated for a moment, looking at him with uncertainty, before slowly nodding and reaching for his hand. Charles didn't know what their story was, but in that instant, he knew he couldn't just leave them there. As he carried the girls to his car, his mind raced. Who were they? Where had they come from? And why were they out here alone in the cold? But more than that, he felt a strange sense of responsibility, as if he had been meant to find them. This was just the beginning of a story that would change all of their lives forever. Asterisk, asterisk. Millionaire catches twin girls crying behind the grocery store, then discovered who they really were. Asterisk, asterisk. Charles carefully placed the girls in the back seat of his car, making sure they were as comfortable as possible. The younger girl, still shivering, huddled close to her older sister, who was trying to reassure her with soft words. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He had always been a man of logic and reason, a man who built his life around control and success. But right now, as he sat behind the wheel, He felt completely out of his depth. The streets of Denver blurred by as Charles drove toward the nearest hospital, the sound of the rain tapping gently against the windows, the only noise filling the car. He kept glancing at the rearview mirror, watching the girls, wondering what had brought them to this moment. Alone in the cold, with no one to turn to. The hospital was just a few miles away, but to Charles, it felt like an eternity. His mind kept drifting back to the look in the girls' eyes, their fear, their sadness, and the way they clung to each other for safety. It was as if the world had abandoned them, leaving them with nothing but each other. Charles had everything, or so he thought. But now, for the first time, in a long time, he began to wonder if what he had was truly enough. The car finally pulled up in front of the emergency room. Charles rushed out, opened the back door, and carefully lifted the girls out of the car. They were both so small, so fragile, but he was determined to do everything in his power to protect them. Inside the hospital, the sterile scent of antiseptic and the soft hum of fluorescent lights filled the air. Nurses rushed past, too busy to notice Charles and the two girls. He walked up to the triage desk, his voice calm but urgent. "I need help. These girls need attention right away." The nurse behind the desk took one look at them and immediately signaled for a team to assist. Within moments, they were whisked away, their small forms disappearing behind a set of swinging doors. Charles stood frozen, his heart racing. He had saved them from the streets, but what happened next? What would they say? What was their story? As he sat in the waiting area, the minutes seemed to stretch on forever. He couldn't stop thinking about the look on the older girl's face when she whispered, "We don't have anyone. We're alone." It haunted him. For the first time in years, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: guilt. Guilt for the life he had built for himself, a life that was empty, despite the riches and accomplishments. He had spent so much of his life focused on business and success that he had forgotten what it meant to truly connect with others. The nurse came back to the waiting room after what seemed like an eternity. "Mr. Winters?" she called. Charles stood quickly. "How are they? Are they okay?" he asked, his voice thick with concern. "The girls are stable, but they're frightened," she said. "We'll need to keep them overnight for observation, but they should be fine. I think they're just exhausted and hungry. You're their guardian, I assume?" Charles blinked, caught off guard by the question. Guardian? He hadn't signed up to be anyone's guardian. He was just a man who had happened to cross paths with two girls in need. But as he thought about it, the more he realized he couldn't walk away from this. "I can stay with them," he said, his voice more confident than he felt. The nurse nodded. "You can go in and see them now if you'd like." Charles walked into the room, where the two girls were lying in bed. The older girl looked up at him, her eyes still wide with suspicion, but there was a small glimmer of trust in her gaze. "Are you really going to help us?" she asked, her voice soft. Charles didn't know what to say at first. He wasn't sure if he was capable of helping them, of truly making a difference in their lives. But in that moment, he made a silent promise to himself that he would try. "I'm not going to leave you," he said quietly. "You're safe now. I'll make sure you're okay." The older girl's face softened, and for the first time since Charles had found them, a small smile tugged at the corners of her lips. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling. Charles sat down beside the bed, watching the two girls as they settled in for the night. He had no idea what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in a long time, he felt like he had a purpose. These girls needed him, and he wasn't about to let them down. Asterisk, asterisk. Millionaire catches twin girls crying behind the grocery store. Then discovered who they really were. Asterisk. Asterisk. The next morning, Charles Winters woke up earlier than usual. His mind was restless, replaying the events of the previous night over and over again. The girls were still in the hospital, and he had promised to return first thing in the morning to check on them. As the CEO of a successful tech company, Charles had spent his life focused on numbers, meetings, and deadlines. But this was different. These two young girls had entered his life with such force that he couldn't just walk away. When he arrived at the hospital, the nurse at the front desk greeted him with a warm smile. "Mr. Winters, the girls are awake and asking for you." His heart skipped a beat. He had no idea what to expect when he walked into that room. Would they be scared, angry, or would they finally start to trust him? He followed the nurse down the hallway, each step feeling heavier than the last. As they entered the room, the two girls were sitting up in their beds, looking much more at ease than they had the night before. The older girl, who had been the most fearful, was now sitting with her sister beside her, playing with a small stuffed animal that one of the nurses had brought for them. When they saw Charles, the younger girl's eyes brightened, and she immediately rushed over to him. "You came back!" she exclaimed, her voice full of excitement and hope. "Of course I came back," Charles replied, smiling. "You're both safe here, and I'm not going anywhere." The older girl, who had been quiet the entire time, finally spoke up. "We never thought someone would help us," she said softly, her voice trembling. "We were always told we'd be alone." Charles felt a lump form in his throat. He couldn't imagine what these girls had been through, but he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to let them face anything alone again. "You don't have to be alone anymore," he said, his voice firm but kind. "I'm here for you, and I'll make sure you're taken care of." The older girl looked at him, her eyes searching his face for any hint of doubt. After a long pause, she spoke again. "Can we tell you our story?" Charles nodded. "Of course. I'm listening." The younger girl climbed into his lap, clearly feeling safe in his presence. The older girl hesitated for a moment before beginning. "Our names are Emma and Lily," she started, her voice steadying as she spoke. "We were living with our aunt. She used to be kind to us, but over time, things changed. She started drinking a lot, and when she got drunk, she would hurt us. We tried to run away, but we didn't have anywhere to go." Charles listened intently, his heart breaking for these girls. He had no idea how someone could treat children this way, but hearing their story made him more determined than ever to protect them. "What happened last night?" he asked gently. Emma swallowed hard before continuing. "Our aunt kicked us out of the house. She said we weren't welcome anymore. We had nowhere to go, so we just sat behind that store, hoping someone would help us." Lily, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "We were scared. We didn't know where to go or what to do. But when you stopped, we thought maybe you would help us." Charles felt a mix of anger and sorrow. These girls had been abandoned by the one person who was supposed to care for them, and yet here they were, looking to a stranger for help. He held both girls close, trying to offer them the comfort they so desperately needed. "You're safe now," he reassured them. "I'll make sure you both have everything you need. No one will hurt you again." Emma looked at him, her eyes filled with gratitude and a hint of disbelief. "Thank you," she whispered. "We thought no one would care." Charles stroked her hair gently. "There are people who care, and you're going to be okay." As the hours passed, Charles made arrangements for the girls. He contacted the proper authorities to ensure they were placed in a safe, loving home. But it wasn't just about finding them a place to stay. It was about giving them something they hadn't had in a long time: hope. The following week, Charles made sure to visit them every day. He sat with them, talked with them, and made sure they knew they were no longer alone. Slowly, Emma and Lily began to trust him, to feel safe in his presence. As he sat with them one afternoon, Emma looked up at him and said, "You're the first person who's ever really cared about us. Thank you for not leaving us." Charles smiled warmly. "It's my honor to help you. You're family now." For the first time in a long while, Charles felt a sense of fulfillment he had never experienced in the boardrooms of his company. These two girls who had been abandoned and lost had found a new beginning, and so had he. The journey they were on together had just begun. But Charles knew that no matter what happened, he would always be there for them. Asterisk, asterisk. Millionaire catches twin girls crying behind the grocery store, then discovered who they really were. Asterisk, asterisk. Weeks passed, and the bond between Charles Winters and the two girls grew stronger with each day. Emma and Lily, once hesitant and fearful, began to open up, slowly letting down their walls. It was a gradual process, but Charles could see the change. Emma, the older of the two, had started to show signs of trust, though there were still moments of doubt in her eyes. Lily, on the other hand, was beginning to smile again, and her laughter, once a distant memory, now echoed through Charles's home. They had moved into the guest house on his property, and while it wasn't a mansion like the main house, it was a warm and safe space. Charles had made sure to create an environment where they could feel at home. He even arranged for a tutor to come twice a week to help the girls catch up on their schooling, as they had missed so much in the past. The girls had been through more than most adults would ever experience in their lives, and Charles knew that their healing process would take time. Every day, he saw them making small steps toward a future that seemed so uncertain just a few weeks ago. One evening, as they sat around the dinner table, Emma spoke up. "Mr. Winters, I've been thinking," she began, hesitating. "You've done so much for us, but do you really want to keep us here?" Charles put down his fork, his attention entirely on her. "Of course I want you here. You're my responsibility now," he said, his voice calm and reassuring. "You don't need to worry about that." Emma looked down at her plate, her fingers tracing the edge of her glass. "But you didn't sign up for this. We're just strangers to you. I don't want to be a burden." Charles reached across the table and gently placed his hand over hers. "You're not a burden. I made a promise to you and Lily, and I plan to keep it. You're family now, and that means everything to me." A tear slipped down Emma's cheek, and she quickly wiped it away, embarrassed. Lily, who had been quietly listening, suddenly spoke up. "I don't want to go anywhere. I like it here," she said softly, her voice filled with certainty. Emma glanced at her sister, a small smile tugging at her lips. "I like it here too," she whispered. That night, Charles sat in his study, reflecting on everything that had happened. He had always prided himself on his ability to control every aspect of his life. His business, his wealth, even his emotions. Everything was neatly organized and predictable. But these two girls had shattered that illusion. They had brought chaos, yes, but also something far more powerful. Love, connection, and a sense of purpose he had never known. For the first time in years, Charles felt truly alive, not because of his success or his money, but because he was making a difference in someone's life. The next morning, Charles took the girls to a park nearby. It was a warm spring day, the sun shining brightly, and the air smelled fresh with the scent of blooming flowers. As they walked along the path, Charles could see that the girls were finally beginning to experience the freedom they had been deprived of for so long. They played on the swings, their laughter filling the air. For the first time, Emma seemed to forget her worries, and Lily's carefree spirit shone through. Charles watched them from a distance, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. He knew that they weren't fully healed yet. There were still scars, both visible and invisible, that they would carry with them for the rest of their lives. But they were no longer alone, and that made all the difference. As they left the park later that day, Emma turned to Charles. "Thank you for everything," she said, her voice full of gratitude. "We don't know what we would have done without you." Charles bent down to her level, his hand resting on her shoulder. "You don't need to thank me," he replied. "You've both taught me more about love and family than I ever could have learned on my own." In that moment, Charles realized that while he had been the one to rescue them, it was they who had rescued him. They had given him the chance to rediscover what truly mattered in life. And as they walked back to the car, Charles knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, as a family. Asterisk, asterisk. Millionaire catches twin girls, crying, behind the grocery store, then discovered who they really were. Asterisk, asterisk. The weeks that followed were filled with change, growth, and moments of deep reflection for Charles Winters. He had promised to care for Emma and Lily, and every day, he saw the weight of that promise grow. They were no longer just two girls he had met on the streets. They were his responsibility, his family. The house was quieter now, filled with laughter instead of the cold silence that had once defined it. Emma and Lily were adjusting, though not without challenges. The scars they carried, though invisible to the outside world, were as real as anything Charles had ever known. Emma, the older one, was still hesitant, still weighed down by a lifetime of distrust. But Charles had learned that healing wasn't a linear path, and every small step forward was a victory. One evening, as they sat around the dinner table, Emma looked up from her plate, her eyes filled with unspoken thoughts. "Mr. Winters," she began, her voice unsure, "do you ever think about what happened to us?" Charles set his fork down, his attention solely on her. "I think about it every day," he said gently. "But that's the past, Emma. The important thing is that you and Lily are safe now, and you have a future here." She nodded but didn't seem convinced. "It's just hard," she whispered. "Sometimes I feel like everything's too good to be true. Like, when will it all fall apart again?" Charles leaned forward, his voice steady and calm. "I understand how you feel, Emma. I've seen pain too. But what we have now, it's real. You're here with me, and I'm not going anywhere." Emma's eyes filled with tears, but she quickly blinked them away. "I just want to be normal," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "To not always be afraid." Charles reached across the table and placed his hand over hers. "You will be. You've already started. You're stronger than you know." Over the next few days, Emma seemed more at ease, though the shadows of her past still lingered. It wasn't just her who needed healing. Charles, too, was undergoing a transformation, one that was more profound than any business deal he had ever closed. The more time he spent with Emma and Lily, the more he realized that they had brought something into his life that he had been missing. Love. Real, unconditional love. He had spent so many years focused on his career, on accumulating wealth and status, but none of that had ever fulfilled him. Not like this. One Saturday afternoon, Charles decided to take the girls to the park. They needed a break from the house, and he knew the fresh air would do them good. The sun was shining, and the day felt perfect for a picnic. As they walked along the path, Charles watched the girls run ahead, their laughter filling the air. It was a sound he hadn't realized he had been craving. Watching them, he felt a sense of peace settle in his chest. They were growing, healing, and learning to trust again. As they sat on the grass, enjoying sandwiches and fruit, Lily turned to him and smiled. "Thank you, Mr. Winters," she said softly. For everything. I never thought I could be happy again. Charles smiled back at her, his heart swelling with pride. You don't need to thank me, Lily, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I'm just glad you're here. You and Emma are like daughters to me now. Emma, who had been sitting quietly next to him, suddenly spoke up. You know, she said, I never believed in fairy tales. I always thought they were just stories for little kids. She paused, looking at Charles. But now, I think maybe, just maybe, there's a little magic in the world after all. Charles laughed softly, his heart full. Maybe there is, he said. And you two are my proof. As the afternoon wore on, Charles couldn't help but reflect on how far they had come. The girls, once lost and alone, were now flourishing, and so was he. The bond they had formed was unlike anything he had ever experienced, and it was one he would protect with everything he had. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of pink and orange, Charles stood up, holding his arms open for the girls. Come on, he said. Let's head home. We've got a new life waiting for us. As they walked back toward the car, Charles knew that this was just the beginning of their journey. They had a long road ahead, filled with challenges and obstacles, but together, they would face them all, because no matter what the future held, they had something that could never be taken away. Each other. Asterisk. Asterisk. Millionaire catches twin girls crying behind the grocery store, then discovered who they really were. Asterisk. Asterisk. As the days passed, Emma and Lily continued to settle into their new life with Charles Winters. They were no longer just survivors of a painful past. They were starting to embrace the possibility of a future filled with hope. Yet, despite the warmth and comfort of their new home, there were still moments of doubt and hesitation, particularly from Emma. She had begun to trust Charles, but deep down, she still feared that one day everything would come crashing down. She had grown up in a world where promises were broken, and abandonment was a constant companion. But Charles was determined to prove to her that she was wrong. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, Emma spoke up. Mr. Winters, she said, her voice soft and uncertain. Do you think we'll ever really be okay? Will we ever stop being broken? Charles looked at her, his heart aching for the girl who had been through so much in her short life. Emma, he began, his voice steady. You're not broken. You're just healing. It takes time, but with every step you take, you're becoming stronger, and you're not alone anymore. Emma met his gaze, her eyes filled with both doubt and hope. But what if I'm just pretending? What if I'll never be like the other kids? Like everyone else? Charles smiled softly, his hand resting on hers. There's no such thing as being like everyone else. What matters is that you're finding your own way, and you're doing it with courage. Over the next few weeks, Charles took every opportunity to reinforce his promise to Emma and Lily. He spent time with them, listened to their stories, and made sure they knew they had a safe place to call home. He even enrolled them in a local community center where they could meet other kids their age, get involved in activities, and feel like they were part of something. At first, both girls were hesitant. They had spent so much of their lives in isolation, never really fitting in, always feeling like outsiders. But Charles encouraged them, gently pushing them outside their comfort zones. Slowly but surely, they began to open up. Emma, who had been the more reserved of the two, started making friends. Lily, always the more outgoing one, thrived in the new environment, playing games and laughing with the other kids. Charles watched from the sidelines, his heart swelling with pride. It was the first time he saw them truly happy, and it was a reminder of how far they had come. One Saturday afternoon, Charles decided to take them on a day trip to the mountains. The crisp air and stunning views would give them all a chance to relax and enjoy each other's company. As they hiked along the trail, Emma turned to him, her expression serious. "Mr. Winters," she began, "I've been thinking a lot, lately, about what you said, about not being broken." She paused, looking out at the beautiful landscape. "I think I finally understand. I'm not broken. I'm just different. And that's okay, right?" Charles smiled, his heart full. "Exactly. Being different is what makes you special, Emma. You don't have to fit into anyone else's mold. You're exactly who you need to be." As the day went on, they laughed, took photos, and enjoyed the simple pleasure of being together. Charles realized that he had changed, too. He had come into their lives with a sense of duty, but now he realized that it was more than that. He had become their protector, their father figure, and in return, they had brought light into his life that he hadn't known he needed. On their way back home, Emma and Lily sat quietly in the back seat, content after a day filled with new experiences. Charles glanced at them in the rearview mirror, a smile playing at his lips. "You both did great today," he said, his voice full of affection. "I'm really proud of you." Emma and Lily exchanged glances, both of them smiling softly. "Thanks, Mr. Winters," Emma said, her voice filled with warmth. "For everything." As they arrived home, the evening sky turned a soft shade of pink, and Charles knew that they were all exactly where they were meant to be. Together, they had built something beautiful, something real. And no matter what challenges lay ahead, Charles was certain of one thing: they would face them as a family. Asterisk, asterisk. Millionaire catches twin girls crying behind the grocery store, then discovered who they really were. Asterisk, asterisk. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when Charles Winters received a call that would change everything. He had just finished his lunch with Emma and Lily when the phone rang. The voice on the other end was calm, but serious. "Mr. Winters, we need to talk. It's about the girls." His heart skipped a beat. He had been living in a blissful state of peace, watching Emma and Lily adjust to their new life. They had started to thrive, finding joy in their new home, and Charles had begun to truly believe that their troubled past was finally behind them. But now, this call threatened to shatter that fragile hope. "What's going on?" Charles asked, trying to steady his voice. "We've uncovered something about their past that we didn't know before. Something important," the voice explained. Charles' mind raced as he tried to process the words. What could be so important that he hadn't been told? Was their safety at risk again? Was the past they had been running from still chasing them? "What do you mean?" Charles asked, his pulse quickening. "We've discovered that the girls are connected to a situation from their past, something that's not just emotional, but legal. We think their biological mother is involved in something that could complicate their future here," the social worker explained. Charles felt the floor beneath him shift. He had promised Emma and Lily that they were safe, that they had a future. And now, that promise was in jeopardy. His mind quickly went to the worst-case scenario. Could their mother come back into their lives? Would they be forced to leave the stability Charles had worked so hard to give them? "What do I need to do?" Charles asked, his voice steady but full of concern. "We'll need to have a meeting with the authorities and figure out the next steps. It's important that we protect the girls from anything that could harm them, but we also need to be transparent with them," the social worker said. "We'll need your help to figure this out." Charles agreed, feeling the weight of the situation settle heavily on his shoulders. He couldn't let this break them. He couldn't let Emma and Lily lose the life they were starting to build. That evening, he sat with Emma and Lily, both girls looking curious as he took a deep breath. "Girls," he began, his voice soft but firm. "There's something we need to talk about." Emma looked at him, her face immediately showing concern. "What is it, Mr. Winters?" she asked. "Are we in trouble?" Lily, sitting beside her, picked at her dress, sensing the change in the atmosphere. Charles looked at them both, taking their hands in his. "No, you're not in trouble. But there are some things from your past that we need to address. It's not about you, but it's important that we're honest with each other," he said, choosing his words carefully. Emma's eyes widened slightly. "What do you mean?" she asked again, her voice shaky. "We've learned that your mother may be involved in some things that could affect your future. We have to figure out how to handle it and make sure you're safe," Charles explained, his heart aching at the look of confusion and fear on Emma's face. "But we're here for you. We're not going anywhere. We're in this together." The room was quiet for a long moment, the weight of his words hanging in the air. Finally, Emma spoke, her voice small and unsure. "Do you think she'll come back? Is she going to take us away from you?" Her question cut through Charles like a knife, but he refused to show any fear. "No, Emma, you're safe with me. I'll protect you both, no matter what," he said firmly. Lily, ever the more optimistic one, leaned into him, her small hands clutching his arm. "We like it here," she whispered. "We don't want to go anywhere." Charles nodded, kissing the top of her head. "And you won't have to. I promise you both. I'll do everything I can to make sure you're not taken away from what we've built here." Over the next few days, Charles worked tirelessly with the authorities, gathering the necessary information and navigating the complex legal issues surrounding the girls' past. Every moment away from them felt like a lifetime. But he knew it was necessary to secure their future. He kept Emma and Lily updated, never sugarcoating the truth, but always reassuring them that they were safe with him. Then, one day, just as Charles was beginning to feel like the storm had passed, he received another call. This time, the news was even more shocking. Their biological mother was coming to town, and she wanted to meet the girls. Charles knew the time had come to face their past once and for all. He wasn't sure what would happen next, but he was determined to stay strong for Emma and Lily, no matter the outcome. The meeting was set for the following week. As the day approached, Charles couldn't help but feel a knot form in his stomach. What would this meeting mean for their future? He had fought so hard to give the girls a new life, a life free from the pain they had known. And now, their past was threatening to take it all away. But one thing was certain: Charles would not let go of the family he had come to love, no matter what it took. Asterisk, asterisk. Millionaire catches twin girls crying behind the grocery store, then discovered who they really were. Asterisk, asterisk. The day of the meeting with their biological mother arrived, and Charles could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He had done everything he could to protect Emma and Lily, and now, the past they had been running from was knocking on their door. The girls were in the living room, watching TV, but Charles could see the unease in their eyes. He had promised them that no matter what happened, he would be there for them. But the unknown was still terrifying. As he paced around the house, waiting for the meeting to begin, he kept wondering what would happen if their mother showed up. What if she demanded they return to her? What if their lives were turned upside down once again? Just the thought of losing them was unbearable. When the doorbell rang, Charles's heart skipped a beat. He quickly composed himself and walked to the door. Standing outside was a woman he had never met, her face marked by years of hardship. She was older than he had imagined, with tired eyes that seemed to carry a heavy burden. For a moment, Charles felt a strange sense of pity for her, but that quickly faded as the reality of the situation set in. This was the woman who had abandoned Emma and Lily, the one who had let them suffer. But as much as he wanted to feel anger, he reminded himself that his priority was protecting the girls. "Are you Mr. Winters?" the woman asked, her voice shaky. Charles nodded. "Yes, I am. And you are?" "I'm their mother," she replied, her words carrying a mixture of regret and defiance. Charles felt his stomach tighten. "What do you want?" he asked, trying to keep his voice calm. "I just want to see them," she said, her voice breaking. "I know I made mistakes. I've been through a lot. But I want them back." Charles could hear the desperation in her voice, but he wasn't sure if he could trust her. She had walked out of their lives once. What was stopping her from doing it again? "I'm sorry, but that's not going to happen," Charles said firmly. "The girls are safe here, and they're not going anywhere." The woman stepped forward, tears welling up in her eyes. "Please, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I was struggling. I lost everything, and I wasn't able to take care of them. But I want to make it right. I want to be their mother again." Charles crossed his arms, his mind racing. He wanted to believe her. He really did. But he couldn't just let Emma and Lily go back to the uncertainty of a life they had already escaped. "You can't just expect them to come back to you because you say you've changed," he said, his voice soft but resolute. "It's not that simple." The woman's face fell, and she stepped back, as if the weight of his words had physically struck her. "I know it's not that simple," she whispered. "But I love them. I've always loved them." Charles remained silent for a moment, watching her. He could see the pain in her eyes, but he also saw something else, a sense of ownership, as if she believed she could just take them back. But it wasn't about what she wanted anymore. It was about what was best for Emma and Lily. "I understand that you may love them," Charles said, his voice steady. "But love isn't just about words. It's about action. It's about showing up, staying consistent, and being there for them when they need you most. And you weren't there for them." The woman's shoulders slumped, and she wiped her tears away. "I know," she said softly. "I failed them. I don't know how to fix that, but I want to try." Charles nodded. "It's going to take time. A lot of time. And I'm not saying that you don't have the capacity to change. But right now, Emma and Lily are my responsibility. I will make sure they have a stable future, and that means protecting them from anything or anyone that could hurt them." There was a long pause before the woman spoke again. "I just want them to know that I'm sorry. I don't expect them to forgive me, but I hope they can one day understand that I never stopped thinking about them." Charles looked at her, his face unreadable. "I'll make sure they know that you came here," he said. "But that's all I can promise right now." With that, the woman nodded, turned, and walked away. As Charles closed the door behind her, he let out a deep breath, his heart still racing. He had protected the girls, and he knew he had done the right thing. But a part of him couldn't help but feel conflicted. Could their mother ever make up for what she had done? Would Emma and Lily ever truly forgive her? As he walked back into the living room, Emma and Lily looked up at him, their faces full of questions. "Is she our mom?" Emma asked, her voice trembling slightly. Charles kneeled in front of them, taking their hands in his. "Yes," he said softly. "She is your mom, but you don't have to worry about her anymore. You're safe here, with me." Emma and Lily exchanged a look, their eyes searching his face for reassurance. "Do you think we can ever be a real family again?" Lily asked, her voice small. Charles smiled, his heart full of love for them. "We are a real family," he said, "and we always will be." For the first time in a long while, Charles felt the weight of the world lift from his shoulders. Emma and Lily were safe. They were together, and that was all that mattered. The future was uncertain, But as long as they had each other, Charles knew they would be just fine. Asterisk, asterisk. Millionaire catches twin girls crying behind the grocery store, then discovered who they really were. Asterisk, asterisk. In the weeks that followed, things began to settle into a new rhythm for Charles, Emma, and Lily. The past was still present in their lives, but it no longer defined them. The tension had lifted, replaced by the warmth of shared experiences and trust. Yet, the uncertainty that still lingered was not entirely gone. Charles had done everything he could to ensure Emma and Lily's safety, but the world outside their home was still full of unknowns. Emma, especially, struggled with the fear that things could slip away again. One morning, after a quiet breakfast, Charles found Emma standing by the window, staring out at the peaceful garden. The sunlight filtered through the trees, casting a soft glow on her face. But there was something in her eyes, something that told Charles she was still carrying a weight, something unspoken. "Is everything okay, Emma?" he asked, his voice gentle as he approached her. Emma turned to him, a small, hesitant smile on her lips. "I'm okay," she replied, though Charles could tell that wasn't entirely true. She looked back outside, as if she was searching for something in the world beyond the window. "I've just been thinking a lot lately," she continued, "about everything that's happened." Charles walked over to her and placed a hand on her shoulder. "It's okay to think about the past, Emma. It's part of who you are. But I need you to know that you're not defined by it. What matters now is that you're safe, and you have a future here with me." Emma took a deep breath, her hands clasped together tightly. "I know," she said quietly. "It's just hard sometimes. I keep thinking about what our mom said, about how she wanted us back, and I wonder if we're really better off without her." Charles felt a pang in his chest. He knew that Emma had doubts about her mother, but he also understood the deep, unshakable longing for connection that ran through her. "You are better off now," he said firmly. "You've been through so much. But I want you to understand that your safety, your happiness, that's my priority. Your mom made mistakes, but that doesn't change the fact that you have a home with me." Emma nodded slowly, but her eyes were still full of uncertainty. "I just don't know if I can ever feel completely okay again." Charles smiled softly. "You don't have to feel okay all the time, but you're not alone anymore. You have me and Lily. We're family, Emma." He pulled her into a gentle hug, and she relaxed into his arms, her head resting on his chest. For the first time in a while, Emma allowed herself to let go of the weight she had been carrying. Charles had become the father she had always needed, and he was more than willing to be there for her, no matter what. Later that afternoon, as Charles and the girls were spending time in the backyard, Lily came running up to him with a big smile on her face. "Mr. Winters, guess what?" she exclaimed. Charles looked down at her, his heart swelling with affection. "What's going on, Lily?" "I made a new friend," she said, practically bouncing with excitement. "Her name is Mia. She's in my class, and we played hopscotch together. She said she wants to come over and play tomorrow." Charles smiled. "That's great, Lily. I'm so happy to hear that." As Lily ran off to join Emma, Charles watched the girls interact with a growing sense of pride. They were starting to live the life they deserved, the life he had promised them. And while the road ahead was still uncertain, Charles knew one thing for sure: he would protect them with everything he had. As the day came to a close and the sun set behind the hills, Charles sat on the porch with the girls, the quiet hum of evening settling over them. The bond between them was growing stronger each day. And the future, though still filled with challenges, seemed brighter than ever before. "Do you think we'll be okay, Mr. Winters?" Emma asked suddenly, her voice soft but hopeful. Charles turned to her, his heart full. "I know we'll be okay," he said, with a warmth in his voice. Because we're in this together, and that's all that matters. The girls smiled at him, their faces filled with trust. For the first time, in a long time, Emma and Lily had the sense that they could finally leave the darkness behind. With Charles by their side, they knew they had the strength to face whatever came next. Together, they had already overcome so much. And now, they were ready to embrace the future as a family. The past may have shaped them, but it no longer defined them. The future was theirs to create. And it was full of hope, love, and new beginnings. Asterisk. Asterisk. Millionaire catches. Twin girls, crying behind the grocery store, then discovered who they really were. Asterisk. Asterisk. The weeks turned into months, and as the seasons changed, so did the lives of Charles, Emma, and Lily. What had started as a promise to protect these two young girls had become a journey of healing, growth, and rediscovery for all three of them. But as they all began to find their place in this new world, another challenge emerged that threatened the fragile peace they had built. One evening, Charles received a call that would test everything he had worked for. The voice on the other end of the line was from the lawyer handling the legal issues surrounding Emma and Lily's custody. "Mr. Winters," the lawyer began, "there's something you need to know. We've received notice that Emma and Lily's biological mother is filing for custody. She's determined to regain custody of the girls, and she's prepared to fight for it in court." Charles felt a chill run down his spine. The past, which he had hoped was buried, had suddenly resurfaced. He had known the possibility of their mother returning was a reality, but hearing those words felt like a punch to the gut. He had worked so hard to create a safe haven for Emma and Lily, and now it seemed everything was at risk. "What do we need to do?" Charles asked, his voice tight with concern. "We need to prepare for a legal battle," the lawyer explained. "It's going to be complicated, and we'll need to gather all the evidence we can to show that the girls are better off with you. But this is going to take time. It could be a long process." Charles took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. He had known that Emma and Lily's past could catch up with them, but this was different. This was not just about their safety anymore. It was about their future. He couldn't imagine life without them, and the thought of losing them was unbearable. He promised them a life free of pain, a life where they were loved and protected, and he wasn't about to let that slip away. The next few days were a blur of meetings, paperwork, and difficult conversations. Charles did everything he could to reassure Emma and Lily, but even he wasn't sure how to navigate what was coming. The girls were already nervous, unsure of what the future held, and the uncertainty in their eyes only made Charles more determined to protect them. He spent every free moment with them, taking them out for walks, helping them with their schoolwork, and talking with them about their fears. It was during one of these conversations that Emma spoke up. "Mr. Winters," she said quietly, her voice hesitant, "do you think we're going to lose everything? What if our mom wins?" Charles looked at her, his heart aching for her. "I don't know what the future holds, Emma," he said softly, "but I do know this. No matter what happens, you and Lily are not alone. I'm not going anywhere. I'll fight for you both, and I'll do everything I can to make sure you're safe." Emma nodded, her eyes filled with tears. "I don't want to go back to her," she whispered. "I don't want to go back to being scared all the time." Charles hugged her tightly, his heart swelling with love and protectiveness. "You won't have to. I won't let that happen." The next few weeks were filled with anxiety, but Charles remained steadfast. He kept reminding the girls that no matter what happened in court, they were a family. He did his best to shield them from the stress of the situation, but he knew it wasn't easy. Emma and Lily both carried the weight of their past, and the looming legal battle only added to their fears. As the court date approached, Charles felt the pressure mounting. He had no idea how the case would unfold, but he was certain of one thing. He would never give up on the girls. They had already been through so much, and they deserved to live the life they had worked so hard to build. On the day of the hearing, Charles stood outside the courtroom, his heart pounding. He held Emma and Lily's hands, their nervous energy palpable. They were both wearing their best clothes, trying to act brave, but Charles could see the uncertainty in their eyes. As they walked into the courtroom, Charles took a deep breath and looked down at the girls. Whatever happens today, remember this: you're both loved, and you're both safe. Nothing changes that. They sat together, waiting for the proceedings to begin, and Charles tried to steady his thoughts. His lawyer had prepared them for the worst, but he was hopeful. The day felt like it stretched on for hours, but when it was finally over, Charles was exhausted. The judge had listened carefully to both sides and had asked tough questions, but in the end, the ruling was in their favor. Emma and Lily would stay with him, their future safe for the time being. When the decision was announced, Charles felt a rush of relief flood over him. He hugged the girls tightly, their faces bright with a mix of joy and exhaustion. "We did it," Charles whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You're safe. You're with me." Emma and Lily, who had feared the worst, now looked at him with trust and gratitude in their eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Winters," Emma said, her voice shaky, but full of relief. "Thank you for fighting for us." Charles smiled, holding them close. "There's nothing I wouldn't do for you both." The courtroom was behind them now, but their journey was far from over. There would still be challenges ahead, but Charles knew that no matter what, they would face them together. Emma and Lily had found safety, love, and family in him, and he would protect that with everything he had. As they walked out of the courtroom, Charles felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in a long time. The future was still uncertain, but as long as they had each other, they could face anything. Their story was far from finished, but the next chapter would be one they wrote together. Asterisk. Asterisk. Millionaire catches twin girls crying behind the grocery store. Then discovered who they really were. Asterisk. Asterisk. As the months passed, the scars of Emma and Lily's past began to fade. Slowly, they both embraced the life Charles had offered them, and they had begun to feel truly at home. The house was filled with the sounds of laughter, of lessons learned and memories being made. For Charles, it had become more than just a home. It had become a sanctuary for all of them. Yet, even with all the progress they had made, life still had its challenges. Emma, although happy, still struggled with moments of doubt. The trauma she carried from her childhood was not something that could be erased overnight. And despite all the love and care Charles gave her, she often found herself haunted by the ghosts of her past. One afternoon, as Charles was sitting in his office, going over some work, he heard a soft knock at the door. It was Emma, standing there with her arms crossed, her usual smile replaced with a look of uncertainty. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" she asked, her voice soft. "Of course, Emma," Charles said, setting down his papers and gesturing for her to sit down. "What's on your mind?" Emma took a deep breath before speaking. "I've been thinking a lot about everything, about how things used to be and how they are now. And I guess I'm just wondering, is this real? Is this actually my life now? Or is it just some kind of dream?" Charles looked at her, his heart aching as he realized the depth of her struggle. It was clear she was still wrestling with the idea of stability, of belonging, and it broke his heart that she still questioned her place in the world. "I can see why you'd feel that way," Charles said softly. "But I need you to understand something, Emma. This is real. Everything you've experienced here, The love, the safety, the support, it's real. You're not dreaming. You're here. You're with me, and you're not going anywhere. Emma nodded slowly, though her eyes still carried a trace of doubt. But what if it all falls apart again? What if everything we've built here is just taken away? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. Charles reached out, gently taking her hand in his. "Listen to me," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "You've been through so much, and I know it's hard to believe that good things can last. But I made a promise to you and Lily. I promised I'd always be here, and that's a promise I'm going to keep. No one is going to take this away from us." Emma looked at him, her eyes searching his face, as if looking for the truth in his words. After a long pause, she spoke again, this time more softly. "I want to believe you. I really do. But sometimes, I just feel like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, like something's going to happen, and we'll be right back where we started." Charles gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. "I understand that fear, Emma. But I need you to trust in this, trust in us. The life we're building, the family we're creating, it's real. And I'm not going to let anything tear it apart." Emma looked down at their joined hands for a moment, then slowly nodded. "I'll try," she whispered. "I want to believe it. That's all I ask," Charles said with a warm smile. "One step at a time." The days that followed saw Emma taking small but significant steps toward healing. She began to open up more, sharing her fears and her dreams with Charles. And while there were still moments of doubt, they became less frequent, and the walls she had built around herself started to crumble. Charles noticed how she would smile more often now, how she began to laugh with Lily and enjoy the little moments of life. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. It was real. But it wasn't just Emma who was healing. Charles, too, was changing. He had entered their lives out of a sense of responsibility, but over time, that sense had evolved into something deeper. He had become their protector, their father figure, and in doing so, had allowed himself to experience the kind of love and fulfillment he had never known. One evening, after dinner, as the girls were doing their homework, and Charles was cleaning up the kitchen, he paused for a moment and watched them. They were laughing together, Lily teasing Emma about something silly, and Emma playfully rolling her eyes. In that moment, Charles realized just how much they had become a family. They were no longer just two girls he had taken in. They were his daughters, and he was their father. The bond they had formed was unbreakable, and as he watched them, he knew that no matter what challenges the future held, they would face them together. Later that night, as the house settled into quiet, Emma came to Charles with a small smile on her face. "Mr. Winters," she began, her voice more confident than it had ever been, I think I'm starting to believe you." Charles smiled warmly, his heart swelling with pride. "I'm glad to hear that, Emma. I always knew you could." She walked over and hugged him tightly. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." Charles held her close, feeling a deep sense of peace. "You don't have to thank me, Emma. This is what family does. We take care of each other." As Emma pulled away and looked up at him, her face filled with gratitude, Charles realized that this was only the beginning. They had come so far, but there was still so much more ahead of them. And with Emma and Lily by his side, he knew that no matter what came their way, they would face it together, as a family. Asterisk. Asterisk. Millionaire catches twin girls crying behind the grocery store, then discovered who they really were. Asterisk. Asterisk. As time passed, Charles began to feel that the life he had created with Emma and Lily was finally becoming something real. The days of uncertainty and fear had slowly been replaced by laughter, love, and a sense of stability. Emma, though still carrying the weight of her past, was beginning to heal. Lily had always been a bright light, her optimism never dimming, but even she had found a new sense of comfort in their home. The bond between them was undeniable, and Charles couldn't help but feel a deep sense of pride in how far they had all come. One evening, after a long day of work, Charles sat on the porch, watching the sunset. Emma and Lily were inside, working on a school project together, and for the first time in a long while, Charles felt a sense of peace. The world outside their little bubble was still unpredictable. But here, in this moment, everything felt right. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Emma came outside and sat next to him, her eyes thoughtful. "Mr. Winters," she began, "do you ever think about what will happen when we're older? What will we do then?" Charles turned to look at her, surprised by the question. "I think about it sometimes," he said with a smile. "But I know one thing for sure. You and Lily will always have a place here. This is your home." Emma nodded slowly, but there was a hint of uncertainty in her eyes. "But what if we need to leave someday? What if we grow up and want to be independent?" Charles looked at her, understanding that this was something she had been thinking about for a while. "I think it's important that you both have the freedom to follow your own paths when the time comes. But no matter where life takes you, you'll always have a place here. You're not alone in this world anymore." Emma's expression softened, and she leaned her head against his shoulder. "I never thought I'd have a place like this," she whispered. "I thought I was always going to be on my own, that I'd never belong anywhere." Charles wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. "You belong here, Emma, and you always will." As the weeks went on, Charles continued to guide the girls through their recovery, ensuring they felt loved and supported every step of the way. There were still moments of doubt, especially when it came to Emma's sense of security. But Charles had learned that patience and consistency were key. He made sure the girls knew they could always turn to him, no matter what. One evening, after dinner, Charles sat with Emma and Lily in the living room. The girls were talking excitedly about a school project, but Charles noticed the shift in the air when Lily suddenly stopped and turned to him. "Mr. Winters," she said, her voice serious. "Do you think we'll ever see our real mom again?" The question caught him off guard, and for a moment, he didn't know how to answer. Emma, who had been silent until now, looked at Charles with a mixture of curiosity and fear in her eyes. "I don't know, Lily," Charles said slowly. "I can't promise you that she won't come back into your lives. But what I can promise you is that, no matter what happens, you are my responsibility, and I will always be here for you." Emma, looking down at her hands, spoke quietly. "I don't want her to come back. I don't think I could handle it." Charles placed a hand on her shoulder, offering comfort. "I understand," he said. "And if that ever happens, we'll face it together. You don't have to go through anything alone anymore." The conversation hung in the air for a moment, heavy with the uncertainty of the future. But Charles could see the trust in Emma's eyes, and he knew that, despite everything they had been through, they were stronger now. Together, they had created something that couldn't be taken away. As the days went by, Emma and Lily continued to grow. They were still learning to navigate the world they had been thrust into, but they were doing it with Charles by their side. And though there would be challenges ahead, Charles knew they had the strength to face whatever came their way. The following week, Charles took the girls on a day trip to the beach, hoping to give them a sense of normalcy and joy. They spent the day playing in the sand, collecting seashells, and enjoying the simple pleasure of being together. For the first time in a long while, Charles saw the girls truly relax, their laughter ringing in the air like music. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with hues of pink and gold, Charles stood with the girls at the water's edge, watching as the waves gently rolled in. "This is nice," Lily said, her voice full of contentment. Emma smiled, her face lit up by the soft glow of the setting Sunday. "Yeah," she agreed. "It feels like everything's going to be okay." Charles looked at both of them, his heart swelling with love. "It will be," he said quietly, "because we're together." And in that moment, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Charles knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them as a family. Together, they had already overcome so much, and now they were ready to embrace whatever the future held, because they had each other, and that was all that mattered. Asterisk. Asterisk. Millionaire catches. Twin. Girls crying behind the grocery store, then discovered who they really were. Asterisk. Asterisk. The years that followed were marked by growth, change, and a deeper sense of family for Charles, Emma, and Lily. It had been a long journey, one filled with challenges, but it was also a journey that had transformed all three of them. Emma, once a shy and guarded girl, had blossomed into a confident young woman. Lily, with her bright smile and infectious energy, had continued to bring light to their lives every single day. Charles had kept his promise to them. He had protected them, provided for them, and above all, loved them as his own. The pain of their pasts had not vanished, but it had become a part of their story, not something that defined them. One evening, as they sat together at the dinner table, Emma spoke up. "Mr. Winters," she began, her voice full of curiosity, "do you ever think about the future? Like, what will happen when we're older?" Charles set down his fork, looking at her with a soft smile. "I think about it all the time," he replied. "And no matter what, I know you and Lily will always have a place here. You're a part of me, and nothing will ever change that." Emma nodded slowly, her eyes thoughtful. "I just wonder, where will we be? What will we be doing?" Lily, sitting across from them, chimed in. "I know where I want to be. Right here, with you." Her voice was filled with excitement, and Charles couldn't help but chuckle at her enthusiasm. "That sounds like a good plan, Lily," he said with a smile. The conversation shifted to other topics, but Charles couldn't shake the feeling that Emma's question had deeper roots. He had given them the security of a home, the love of a family, but he knew there was still much to be done. They were still healing, still growing, but they were doing it together, and that was all that mattered. As the years passed, Emma and Lily continued to thrive. They excelled in school, made friends, and participated in activities they had never thought possible. Emma joined the school debate team, her voice growing stronger with each passing day. Lily discovered a passion for art, her drawings filling the walls of their home. They were both becoming the young women Charles had always hoped they would be. One day, when Emma turned 18, Charles took her aside. "You've grown so much, Emma," he said, his voice filled with pride. "And I want you to know, no matter where life takes you, you'll always be a part of this family. You've always had a place here, and that will never change." Emma looked up at him, her eyes filled with emotion. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't think I could ever express how much this means to me." "You don't have to," Charles said softly. "You've shown me more than I could have ever imagined. You and Lily both have made this house feel like a home." It was a moment that felt like the closing of one chapter and the opening of another. Emma was ready to face the world, and Lily, though still young, was following closely behind. They were strong, confident, and loved everything Charles had wanted for them. But even as they looked to the future, he knew that their past would always be a part of them. It had shaped them, yes, but it did not define them. They had created something new, something beautiful. Years later, as Charles sat in the living room with Emma and Lily, now young women, he realized how far they had come. Emma, who had once been so closed off, was now talking about her dreams for college. Lily, who had once been so uncertain, was planning for her future with the same excitement and passion that had always defined her. They had become not just a family, but a team united by love, trust, and shared experience. As the evening came to a close, the three of them sat on the porch, watching the sun set. "Do you ever think about where we would be if we hadn't found each other?" Emma asked quietly. Charles looked at her, his heart full. "I think we were always meant to be together," he said. "Everything that happened brought us here, to this moment." Lily smiled brightly. "And we're not going anywhere." Charles nodded, his heart swelling with love for the two young women who had become his daughters. "No, you're not," he whispered. "You'll always be with me." And as they sat there, side by side, watching the world change around them, Charles knew that this was the life they had built together, one filled with love, hope, and the unbreakable bond of family. No matter where the future took them, they would always have each other. Their journey had not been easy, but it had been worth it. And in the end, they were stronger, more resilient, and more united than ever before. This was their story, a story of redemption, love, and the family they had chosen to create. And it was a story that would continue for as long as they had each other.